Okay. Um, I think the first thing is doohickey. Can we get our doohickey assignments, do you think, emailed by like Monday or Tuesday? Does that seem possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. I'm about a quarter done now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're ahead of me today. I will have my rough draft done today. That's my goal. Or tonight. Get that started.
Yeah, I haven't started mine yet either, but I'm doing the morale, so
Yeah.
it should be pretty easy.
Yeah. So. Okay, we will start it on our discussion then. So.
I just wanted to run my solutions by you guys really quick.
Okay.
So first one, new hire orientation. Second, job-specific training. Third, mentoring program. And fourth, either lifelong learning or incorporating games in training. So
I like the lifelong learning.
I think lifelong learning.
I think that's more applicable.
Oops. Time to get up. There. Okay.
Yes.
Silence my phone, but it doesn't silence alarms, so.
No.
Okay, lifelong learning it is. I'll just delete what I had for the games, but that's okay. It wasn't much.
I think I'm just anti-games. I hate training and playing games.
Well, games are good, and I think that games really help enhance the learning process. But I think lifelong learning for the doohickeys would be a better idea than the games, because games typically get people to talk to each other more, but I think you can incorporate that into another category.
Right. Maybe that's part of training. You know, part of making an effective training program is to have games, have it be, so that they remember their training.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, well, I'll do that. I'll incorporate it in there. There. Ha. I think with games, when I was younger, my stepfather, he was pretty competitive, and so it really kind of took the fun out of the games. So I had a bad experience growing up with games, but I enjoy them now.
And then it's funny because I play games in primary like every other week. We always have a game. We always have, we're always playing games. I mean, that's just something we do in primary. Because I do think it helps kids learn.
Yeah.
But when it's so competitive, I'm just not a competitive person. Like, I could care less. Win, lose, whatever. I just don't care. But it does help my kids remember what they're learning. They'll go home and say, this is what we learned.
Right.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's good. Thank you for your input.
Okay, we will start with what were some of the positive results of the pilot program at the Federal Reserve?
I think it got some. I don't think it necessarily mentioned this, but it was a sense that I got out of it was that there was an increased communication between the management and the staff, and not only that, I don't remember who it was, but one of the female mentors said that she was actually encouraged by her mentee to go back to school, and so there was I don't know if symbiotic is the word, like a symbiotic relationship where they were benefiting from one another, even though the initial intent was the mentee ideally was to gain and benefit from the mentor. So I think those that were open to learning and growing and receiving on both ends, I think that was a pretty big positive for them.
I agree. And I also think that the benefits was there was more collaboration amongst the different departments because they were collaborating together. It wasn't like, they had to be mentored by somebody in their same department. So it gave them a better sense of what goes on in the other departments as well. Because, of course, you would talk about that when you get together. And it mentioned that somebody felt or got a different job in another department.
Right.
That they were really excited for this new opportunity. So I think that it really helped build a collaborative team, not just amongst departments, which is typically how the collaborations are built, but across the company as a whole.
So why was the program positive? So, like, what was the reasons for the positive results?
Well, the mentees were able to, I think it boosted their self-esteem, boosted their self-worth, and I think they came to know and understand and believe that they could accomplish more, they could do more, they were capable of more than just staying in the same job that they either had been hired for, and could encourage, like Melissa said, that movement from one department to another, which is actually good for the company.
Right. I agree.
So because it was a pilot program, like, part of the reason I think it was successful is because it was voluntary. Like, you didn't have to be part of it.
Yeah.
There wasn't that force that said, okay, you have to find a mentor, or, we're going to find you a mentor. I think if they would have done that, I don't think it would have been as successful.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. When people voluntarily participate in something, they're more engaged, more involved. So I think that was a big thing.
Do you think how they matched up, do you think that played a role in how well the mentor-mentee program went? Because they went through like a pretty thorough matching program to find people that would work well together.
Yeah, I think it did. I think it would have been successful no matter who they paired people up with, but it made it more successful when they took the time to really look and see, okay, what would be the best fit.
They didn't have, like, the entire program wasn't 100% successful, so I think by having taken the time to do interviews, have them fill out, I believe they submitted applications, indicated what their interests were, what they did outside of work, helped to create a connection between them. And I think it was important that they actually stuck with their cutoff, which was 25. They had, which gave them more opportunity to find appropriate mentors and mentees to match. And I think they cut off their mentors sooner, which was interesting, that they wouldn't have had the same criteria on both sides, that if we find you a match, then you'll be a part of the program. And it doesn't, just because we don't find you a match doesn't mean that you're not a good mentor or you wouldn't have been a good mentee. But having that matching created an initial connection. And sometimes people have a hard time finding something common between them.
Right.
So how can mentoring help employees with career development?
Just being able to talk with somebody who has the experience that you're wanting helps a lot. In my current role at my company, before I was promoted to be a supervisor, I sat with other supervisors and asked them the ins and outs of their jobs. I basically interviewed them and got to know the position more, and by doing that, it helped me know exactly what I would be doing as a supervisor if I received that role in the future. So I think just being able to talk to different people in different departments at a higher level than I am, it would really help in the career development.
Yeah. And I don't think all of the mentees were at entry-level positions, but especially for those that are at entry-level positions, they may not have had family or friends or access to individuals that know and understand how the educational process works. Some people are afraid just to go to school, or how do you apply to go to school, and what education do I need to take in order to have the job that you have, and is that something that I want to do, or somebody and I am assuming because they had chosen different pay grades, that if you increase in a pay grade, I'm not accustomed to that system, but if you increase in pay grade, you must be required to have a higher level of education or competency.
Usually.
And responsibility, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
I thought it was interesting, in my career, a lot of salons do something very similar, where you come in as a junior stylist or an associate stylist, or you come in as some kind of trainee, and so you have to work underneath another stylist to learn how everything's done in there at that shop. And so I thought, well, that's just normal. I thought every place, that's just how things are done, but
Nope.
yeah, apparently that's not it. So what other approaches or programs might help employees develop their careers?
I know they had experience with, worked in a fairly large warehousing and distribution facility, had over 1,000 people there, and we did cross training in the different departments, so it helped them not only understand how their work impacted somebody else in the company, in the business, but it also helped them to see what other opportunities there were for them to grow and to develop. It just may have been like a lateral move from a entry level to a different entry level position, but it opened up their eyes to the opportunities that they really could have to grow and develop. And I know this doohickeys is an extreme for the purpose of generating, these papers for us to see things. Probably between 80 and 90% of our promotions were from within, that we promoted people from within the organization.
Yeah, that's kind of the same at my company. And at my company, we also have this thing called the GROW program. And it's where people at an entry-level position can spend a month in another department learning the ins and outs of the department. So they get to actually work in that department, see how things are done, do it themselves, and really see and get to know that department. So when positions open, they can decide whether they really want to transfer there or not.
Oh, wow.
And it's a great opportunity. We've had a lot of success with it, and a lot of people are more satisfied with their job when once they've completed it.
Mm. And I've also been in companies where they would do culture training, but part of the culture training was also learning to problem solve and learning how to interpersonal interactions. So some just training sessions where they would be given, I think it was 3 days, between 3 days to 5 days, so an entire week was the whole program. So they were completely gone from their job in this training, and then there was follow-up on how they were utilizing that just in their day-to-day work.
I always worry when you're gone from your job, like, how do you make up that time? When you're, how do you, because either you have to have somebody else do your job, or you have to make up what you've missed doing. It's so hard to be gone from your job for that much time. So that was one thing that worried me, like during the mentor, like when I read the mentor program with the Federal Reserve, I was like, they're gone quite a bit. I mean, to do this, I mean, they had to, for that training, they were gone. So either somebody had to take over with their job duties, or they had to, double time, their work to get it all done.
Right. Well, and part of that, I mean, that's why the supervisors and stuff were getting angry.
Yeah.
And didn't want their people to go.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when you think about it, I mean, yeah, they might be gone for 2 whole days, but some of them had been thinking about quitting. So giving up 2 days compared to giving up an employee, I think that's a good. I think that would be a good exchange.
If the manager knew you were going to quit, then but I don't know that always the managers know what's going on.
Right, but even then, people have a better job satisfaction after they completed the program.
Yeah.
So they would most likely stay longer at the company anyway, even if they weren't thinking of quitting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hiring somebody or distributing the workload. That's. We brought on a couple of extra people in each area to compensate, or just not as much work was getting done. One of our managers made a comment in the city, because if we don't get the work done, it has to be done the next day. At some point, it has to get done.
Right.
But we had a big transit strike where the bus drivers weren't driving, and they were on strike for like a month to a month and a half, 2 months. And he said, the difference between them and us is if we stopped work for a month and a half, we would have a month and a half of work to catch up on. Where the transit, all they do is get back in their bus. It's not like there's a month and a half of people standing at the bus stop that they need to catch up on. They just get back in their bus and start driving. So each job is a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think a less formal mentoring program would be better, where mentees are free to find whatever mentors they need to help them progress in their careers, rather than being assigned someone?
I think assignments work better because they don't know everybody in all the departments. I mean, it would be impossible for them to know. So I think the assignments really helped give the diversity that the program needed. So I would say keep the assignments.
I agree. It's much more effective if the individual how many individuals are that outgoing that they will go up to somebody who is 2 or 3 pay grades above them and say, will you be my mentor? So I don't think that it would be as effective, and I don't think that the mentoring would happen, even though they would make it known, or even if they encouraged their higher level individuals to mentor somebody below them. I think the process that they went through to match the individuals was a big part of the success of the program. Even though they had a couple situations where they were kind of done with each other, they were able to work through them, and they didn't get us. I don't remember that they had to end any of those relationships. They were able to work through them.
I agree, because I'm not outgoing enough to go find mentors. That's just not who I am. I mean, that's just, so I would do much better being assigned somebody. But then on the flip side, I don't know that I would sign up to be, to do it either. So why would a company want to create a formal mentoring program rather than allowing mentoring relationships to form more naturally?
Will you say that again?
Why would a company want to create a formal mentoring program rather than allowing mentoring relationships to form more naturally?
I think, again, to make sure that diversity is there.
Yeah, I think in this particular instance, I think it was a good example of, I remember who that lady was that she said she'd commit 10 hours a week or a month to the program, and then ended up working at it full time.
Right.
Rubenstein, the head of it.
Rubenstein, yeah. I think she needed, they needed some direct involvement to have the level of success that they had with it. So I'm almost, I don't know if we're going to cover this, but their second round, I think, wasn't successful because they had stepped back from their promotion. They didn't promote it as much, and if left to just kind of happen, I don't think that they would have near the success that they could or should have had.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, they were expecting people to be more word of mouth and have talked it up, and so that didn't happen. Because that's kind of the next part of it is, why do you think less people signed up for the second round? And that's my first thought, was because people didn't talk it up. Yes, they were very successful, but they didn't. I don't think the mentors or the mentees really went out of their way to encourage other people to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I worked for an architect about, I won't tell you how long ago because then you'll know how old I am. I worked for an architect, and I was assigned one of the partners of the firm. It was a big architectural firm for the area. I mean, there were a couple hundred people working there, and they had quite a few architects. And one of the partners was my mentor. And I worked there for 6 months and then left to go to school. But during the 6 months, he did not meet with me once, and I might have seen him a handful of times in those 6 months. He didn't come to see how things were going. He was the individual that hired me, but I thought, well, that was my first experience of a mentoring situation, but I knew it wasn't good. And according to them, it was a formal program, but it just, there was no follow-up, nothing happened, there was no structure to it. And without structure, it's a hit and miss, it's haphazard at best.
Yeah.
So what could the company have done to get more applicants the second time around? William, you touched on this, that they should have advertised it more. Anything else they
Right.
should have done?
Well, yeah, just the amount of promotion they put into the first one. They went to the lunchroom. They had a table set up. They were approaching people. They had posters. They had all that fanfare, and I think, yeah, they counted too much on the word of mouth. But what they didn't understand was that they still hadn't gained the confidence. They had a culture in the company that was going to take more than one round of mentoring to break through, that it wasn't just a flavor of the day. They needed to let people know, we're committed to this. It was a huge success. They had a big party. I think they could have used their celebration at the end to promote it. They should have, or could have, I guess should is a little more powerful, but they could have had their mentees talk it up, officially ask them. Make sure that you're talking it up with others, and if you know of anybody, recommend the program to them. Share with them what experiences that you had and why you feel that it was a successful program. They're looking at their numbers. Nobody was completely dissatisfied, and very few were moderately satisfied. They had a lot of people that were very pleased with the program, so they should have capitalized on those individuals, but officially send them out as their word of mouth if that's what they wanted to do, instead of the posters and so forth.
I think they should have held those meetings in the lunchroom again, but this time had people who had completed the program be there to really talk about it and get people involved. I think also a lot of people may not have signed up because they were concerned about the time commitment. And so I think they should have addressed that as well within their advertising, saying we know that this is a time commitment, but these are the benefits to it, and this is what people have said about the program, and really give those testimonials in the advertisement, not just at the celebration that they had.
So, okay, well, here was my first thought. I did the Pathway program, and I was in the first group in our area. We were huge. There were 40 or 50 of us. The second group was less than 20.
Wow.
How was that? Because, I mean, and it was not because we didn't talk it up and we did not encourage, but it was because everybody that wanted to do it did it the first time around. As soon as it was announced, it was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what happened. If you wanted to do it, you went for it the first time, and if you weren't interested, it was like, well, I didn't want to do it the first time. Why am I going to do it the second time?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I think they also could have gotten the direct management, like the supervisors and the managers involved, to maybe recommend some people for it instead of just asking for volunteers. Really have the direct supervisors get involved and talk it up to their employees and recommend the program. I think that would have been beneficial too.
That would, I think, would have been a lot better.
Yeah, Melissa, that was a good point, and they should have started that probably about halfway through their first year, because they no doubt had some success in their first year, or the first 6 months of the program. And by, to your point, Carlene, there are a lot of people, well, I don't want to be involved, so you got to sell it. You've got to get out there and you got to promote it and sell it. And a 2-week selling program isn't going to motivate some people. They're going to take longer to think about it and see the benefits and the opportunities. And selling it for 6 months before the next round kicks off, you'll have a potentially higher percentage of people. But again, to your point with the Pathway, at some point you're going to run out of people that or potentially you're going to have fewer people that are interested
Right.
or have a desire to be a part of the program.
I hope so. Well, I mean, I think, Melissa, that would be one thing is like, if you recommend people, are you forcing them to be involved? I mean, how do you draw the line between, saying, I think this would be good for you, and saying, like, are you saying you have to do it? At what point do they think? That would be my concern.
Well, if they had the recommendations, they could invite those people to a meeting for maybe an hour and really give the ins and outs in more detail to those employees. And then just say, this is not mandatory. This is something that's recommended, and your supervisor or manager has recommended you to complete the program and participate in it. And but it's up to you ultimately. And I think giving them that opportunity to learn in more detail about the program instead of just what they read on advertisements, I think maybe we could get more people involved that way as well.
So how do they get enough people to mentor? We've talked a lot about how to get people to be mentees, but how do they get enough people to be mentors? Because wasn't that an issue too? They didn't have as many.
Well, I think again, trying to understand where this pay grade difference. I think that could be rolled into their annual performance review, or not performance review, but their plan for the coming year. What are your plans? And giving some sort of incentive. It doesn't always have to be money, but some degree of an incentive to have them have that part of their work. This terminology can always get me messed up, but their plan, their personal plan of progress for the coming year.
Yeah, I think an incentive is a really good idea.
But then do you end up with people that aren't going to be good mentors being mentors? Because some people, like that architect that you had, he was a terrible mentor. And if he had to be one, then,
I see what you're saying. But they also have that selection process.
Mm-hmm. But it's also part of their program was teaching somebody how to be a mentor. So the architect that was mentoring me, I think there was no training, there was no program that was defined as to what the expectations were, and I think if you give or provide guidance, training, and follow up, you'll have more people. Nothing's a guarantee, and there are just people that should never be mentors. This guy wasn't a terrible person. I mean, he was a great. He was a nice guy for the most part, but I think part of it was he just didn't understand what I needed, and I wasn't outgoing enough at the time to say, to go up to him and say, yeah, I've been here a couple of months now as a mentor and mentee relationship. What are we supposed to be doing? Is there, you want to go for lunch? Can I spend an hour with you? Or, what things, maybe I needed to initiate more. But there was no training for me either as the mentee as to what this program really meant. So it was a very unstructured program, and I think with a structured program, I think more people would be interested if it became the culture in the company that it is a prestige to be a mentor. You can develop that as part of the company culture. Then you'll have an abundance of individuals that are interested, but they also do need to prepare individuals. You can't just expect someone. You can't just give them a title. It goes back to the training that I need to be working on my paper. Is you can't just tell somebody, well, you're the HR expert. Do your job. You have to tell somebody what it is. You have to give them that training in order for them to perform to the level that you would expect them to perform.
Yep, I agree.
So what specifically would you do to make the mentoring program better for the Federal Reserve?
You go ahead, Melissa. I think I've heard my voice too much.
I think that they could find a way to maybe condense it a little bit so that maybe it wasn't as long of a time commitment so more people could get involved. I think they could also talk to those in leadership roles and really sit down and talk to them about the program and help them understand why they're doing it so that they can promote it in their departments and with their teams. I think that was part of the problem this time, was that some of those people in those leadership roles weren't supportive of it, and so people were a little hesitant. And that could have had a ripple effect a year later when it came time to start the next round. People may have seen that and thought, oh, I don't want to get in trouble with the boss, so maybe I won't do it this time. I also think
leadership needs to be part of the. They need to be encouraged to join the mentors. Become mentees.
Right. I also think that they could improve the program by getting those who were involved in it the first time to maybe come in on the first day and help explain the expectations and how everything will work. I think that'll give the people from the previous time the opportunity to use those leadership skills that they developed. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does.
So something else they could have done to help alleviate some of the issues with the managers and supervisors who were unhappy that their workers were gone for 2 days for their initial training, that the managers or supervisors who were going to have somebody in the program, that those individuals should have had some training as well so that they understood what the expectations were and help them work through the challenges that they were going to be facing. How are they going to ensure that these individuals are going to be given the time to participate in the program? I think that's somewhere that it doesn't have to be anything extensive. A couple of hours of brainstorming, or if there's a particular department or area that is really going to suffer when somebody is lost, what can they do internally to compensate for a missing individual? Can another department move somebody over because their workload isn't as heavy? Is there somebody qualified that can go in? Can they cover for each other and make sure that they're not getting behind in their work?
Right.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's probably the best one, is that they need to have some way to cover, because I think that was probably why people weren't willing to do it the second time around. But why? So why were they willing to do it the third time around? because I thought that was interesting that they said that they had more, like the third time, the third round, they had,
Yeah,
so I thought that was really interesting
I thought that was really interesting too. I have no idea.
because they never really covered why the third round had more. So do you think they did that? Do you think they made it more accessible or made it easier for management or encouraged the management to, or just word of mouth?
I think there were probably a few factors. I think they probably promoted it more, and the word of mouth. Now the employees and the company culture is starting to change from this is just a flavor of the day to this is going to actually continue to move forward. Well, maybe I will I'll get involved in this. I don't want to get involved in something that's just going to fizzle out after a year or after one round. Now we've had 2 rounds and we've had 2 successful rounds. I think that makes a difference. That was specifically something that I remember reading about was that they were not a good organization to follow through and continue with something. And a lot of organizations do that. Have you ever read the book Good to Great?
No.
No.
Oh. So he identifies that in companies that go from being good companies to great companies don't just do a flash in the pan. Here's today's. We're going to do this great program, and 6 months later, it's gone.
Right.
So you have to keep driving and driving, and they had to continually be committed to the success of the program. And Rubenstein probably was still doing it full time, so they were able and willing to adjust to changes that were necessary to ensure the program was a success. It's not enough to say, well, we sat down and we did all this brainstorming, so we must have figured out all the issues and problems, and it can't be us. It can't be our planning because, well, we're the smart ones. I think they were willing to make changes when and wherever necessary, and so some of the changes were the promotion and the word of mouth, and they must have incorporated some other things to get people excited about it.
That's a good point.
Very good. Okay, that's everything, guys.
Right on.
Right on.
Well, I feel more prepared for my my paper.
Good.
Good. Well, you guys have a great week. Carlene, you did an awesome job.
Thank you.
Yes. Very
Okay.
good. Thank you.
All right.
Really good group.
Do you know what the most difficult part of this is? And I think Brother Bonnie, I might even mention it to him because I've watched and listened to how he conducts his Hangouts on air. And if he doesn't get a response right away, I think he just sense a little frustration, not huge, just a little bit, why people aren't responding. But it's the body language. We can't see each other, and we don't know. I know I'm sitting here waiting because I don't want to cut Melissa off, and we're kind of waiting to see who's going to respond. So you end up with the dead air, and you're wondering, okay, so, and I don't know if there's really any way that you can get around that unless, I don't know on my screen if I had a way to put all participants up and I could see their body language, that might help.
Yeah, well, you can see their like pictures at the bottom, but you almost like it's still hard, because not if you can't, today I have a picture, but most of the time I don't, and so yeah, and then you have like background noise and everything. So I'm with you. I mean, I understand why we do like the group meetings like this, but it sometimes just drives me nuts. But it's the same way in class. I mean, a lot of times we'll have group discussions in like an actual classroom, and nobody will say anything because you don't want to be the first one to make a comment, you know.
Right.
Yeah. But when you're in class, like in an actual classroom, if somebody puts their hand up, well, at least the instructor knows there's one person interested in making a comment. There's some control. There's an opportunity. But also as an instructor, you did very well, Carlene, letting us just even think, because when you, as a teacher, and I've talked with different very good instructors, that they said you have to count to like 15 or 20, because people are formulating an answer. Just because you asked a question doesn't mean that they knew what your question was, and answers don't come that fast. Sometimes you got to count to 30 and give them 30 seconds. Seems like an eternity, but they need the time to formulate their response so they don't look foolish. And
Right.
and then when you give them the 30 seconds, then the answers flow, and then
Right.
it comes. So you did very well on that, rather than being uncomfortable with the dead air. Dead air is good. Dead air
No,
just
dead
means
air is
people
fine.
are thinking.
We are not on TV. Dead air is okay.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
I told my ex-husband I said that, but dead air is okay. He works on TV. Dead air is a bad thing.
Okay, well, you guys have a great week. I've got to take off to go to work.
Yes. Have
All
fun.
right.
Bye.
Take care, Nasa. Have a good week, guys. See you next week.